On August 8, 2011, Vermont suffered severe flooding the likes of which hadn't been seen in 83 years. Hurricane Irene wiped out vital roads and bridges, left many homeless, cut off power to thousands of people, and left millions of dollars of damage in its wake. Though the flooding lasted only for a few hours, the damage took months to fix. It is in this environment that the Vermont character truly showed itself. Neighbors and communities would pull together to look after those who had lost so much. Food and other necessities were often delivered via ATV to homes that had been isolated by Irene's damage. Communities were pulling together, and at the heart of many of these communities were public libraries.
Vermont libraries suffered remarkably little damage during Tropical Storm Irene, but here's the real story about Vermont libraries in a kind of disaster scenario that Irene brought to our state. They were real community centers providing a wide variety of services for Vermont citizens. So here's some stories. In Dover, John Flores, the director there, opened the library extra hours and really looked to the community to see what kinds of needs there were. He responded with bulletins from the for state emergency management, from FEMA, gave information out. Libraries across the state provided bathrooms, running water. Some communities just didn't have that. Phones, internet service. Many libraries reported a high increase in the use of their public computing centers and their Wi-Fi because Vermonters were reaching out to friends, family in Vermont, family across the country to let people know that they were all right, to get information about their own properties, maybe to call insurance agencies. So that initial activity right at the storm in the first couple of days, really high use of libraries just to get basic information. In Cavendish, we had a different situation. Cavendish is a community library, so it's a combined school public library, and the school acted as the town emergency shelter. So the librarian there reported that the library was open 24/7, so people could come in and use the library even though staff wasn't there, and they did use it. They used books, lots of reading aloud to young children by parents. They used DVDs, so they were able to set up DVDs on computers and have movies showing. In Woodstock, the librarian reported to me that the library really felt like just what a public library should be, filled with people looking for their neighbors, giving hugs, getting information, and just telling their stories, because you know when you come through something traumatic, you all have a story, and it's just good to tell it, to make sure that you're feeling okay, a little shaky maybe some people, speaking with neighbors, and she said a lot of that was going on in the library. So what kinds of information were people looking for? They were looking for FEMA information, lots of people using library computers to make those applications online, questions about insurance, questions about roads, where can I drive in town, what roads are open. So all of the information that came through the state of Vermont, that Google mapping program that came out was just terrific, and libraries were able to get that information out to the folks that were coming in. And in many cases, these folks were new to the library. They were not necessarily library users, but they recognized that the public library in their town was a source for information, for community, for meeting neighbors. It was a safe place. Some people wanted just a sense of normality. Imagine losing your home, not having any place to go, and being able to go into a public library and sitting down and just looking around and saying, okay, life is okay, I can go on. We had great response from the nation. I had phone calls from all over the place, from libraries, from non-libraries, from bookstores, from library users in many different states saying, we'd like to help. What do libraries need? And I was happy to report that in most cases we were doing just fine. But we did start an emergency response fund in the Vermont Public Library Foundation. We set up a separate account, and I'm happy to report that we have received over $10,000 in donations to that fund, and that money will be used to help libraries that had damage during the storm. And that's a great thing. And a wonderful story. Recently, we heard from a school, a preschool in Missouri, The children there heard about Storm Irene, heard about the libraries, love books, love reading, and so for the past many months, they've been collecting pennies. And so I got a check for almost $400, I think, that they had collected in pennies to help Vermont Libraries. So you can see that this story and the power of what public libraries do goes well beyond the borders of our state. Some other library stories. Let's go to Bethel. In Bethel, the librarian reported that they were very busy, particularly with stranded campers. Remember, this was August, so we had out-of-town visitors, we had tourists coming to the state. What were they going to do? They found the public library and, again, heavy use of Wi-Fi and the internet. Waitsfield Public Library became a staging area for the town, and this is a great story because the town offices in Waitsfield were compromised by water. They were worried about all of the public documents and the land records, so they decided to use the Waitsfield Library, which was evidently on a little bit on higher ground. So they, as I understand it, broke a window, got into the library, opened it up so that they could move all of those precious documents from Town Hall into the library for safekeeping. So that's a whole nother different use for a library. We also know that charging stations, that's a big need. If you're in a place with no electricity and you're trying to charge your laptop or your cell phone or whatever that kind of thing you need for basic communication with the world, folks were flocking to their library. And I know that, again, in Dover, I think John reported that he brought in extra charging equipment and power strips and that kind of thing because people were bringing in their devices to get charged up. So all in all, our libraries just did a terrific job. I'm proud of them all. I think it just shows us and it shows Vermonters how important community public libraries are.
Brandon has changed considerably over the past 5 or 6 years, I would say. We have now are developing a sort of artist community, as you might say. We have Warren Kimball, who is our folk artist here, and we have the Brandon Artist Guild, which just opened up several years ago, and that is growing and growing. It brings a lot of tourists to town. In the summer, we have a lot of tourists over at Lake Dunmore, over in Salisbury. Our library services not only the town of Brandon, but also Sudbury, who contributes to us, Leicester, Goshen, some from Salisbury, Whiting. So it comes to almost 6,000 people that we service. When Irene hit Brandon, I believe it was a Sunday evening, I was at home. I didn't realize even how seriously our town was impacted. I got a call from a friend and she said, my husband's stuck in the middle of town. He can't get home. He was at the Brandon Artist Guild. Well, what happened was, the dam broke, the water came over. Actually, Route 7 literally washed away. You couldn't even get to the grocery store. We were running out of bread and milk and every other thing for a few days. Finally, the trucks did start coming through the back roads as best as they could. Well, that was the first impact on our library because I wasn't the only one who was lost. Anybody traveling from Rutland to Middlebury also, none of the roads were marked. Nobody expected anything like this. So here we are, all on these back dirt roads, nobody knowing where to go. So all the whole next week, until the roads were marked, clearly, we had people coming in. The road was closed, I'd say, at least, Route 7 was closed at least for a week. The town offices were closed because they got washed out. And actually, I believe they were closed for an entire week. They are still operating out of the fire station here in town. So there was not even any town officials that you could go to. The police station, you couldn't get to the police station. So we were, I would say, really important because we were the only place you could come to for information, which was imperative. Many people lost their electricity, they lost their internet, they lost their phone. So our computers we were backed up. We stayed open extra hours. We had people, even like a month later that still didn't have their heat. They came in to be warm. There was no school that first week at all because the buses couldn't get through town. So we had a lot of students coming in. It was really a place that folks could share their stories, which was very, very necessary, I believe, psychologically. Using the fax machine, people immediately were dealing with insurance companies, with FEMA. We tried to help them as best we could. We were the only meeting place in town. There was no place to meet because you couldn't get any place but here. We were very fortunate in that we are a little bit higher up, and lucky for us, we had just completed having our foundation done and the place regraded, so we had no water damage. We just had some water problems on the roof, but that was it. I would like to share one story. It's actually an ongoing story of how two of our patrons were very much affected by Irene and have used the library since Irene on a weekly basis. They are over in a flood area and their home was flooded. Actually, they had to be rescued by boat with their cat. They've never been allowed to return home. They lost all their belongings, including a baby grand piano. They're just grateful, of course, that they made it through. One of the neighbors had a small house that they're letting them use, but they are in our library every week, I think some for moral support, also to use our fax machine, copy machine, as they're working with FEMA, trying to get everything resolved. It meant a lot, I believe, for them while they're here. It's kind of like a family-type atmosphere we have at our library. And I think it was very therapeutic for them to share their feelings and their experiences. And because of that, a lot of neighbors came and really pulled together to help them with clothing, food, and whatever. So that story will always stay with me and everybody else here on how important a library can be to patrons. I know they appreciate us very much, and we've gotten very close to them, and it's very gratifying to see how finally things are coming together for them. So in conclusion, I would like to say that I feel that the library is very important, and I believe our community members realize how important we are because it is a central meeting place. We are working now with our select board in town, and we're going to become part of the emergency plan that they are working on. So they can, people will know that the library is a place they can come to for whatever they need, information or whatever. So I think it's very, very important that we all appreciate what a library can do for a community.
My name's Jim Burmester. I've lived in Moortown for about 6 years, and I've been coming to the library for all 6 of those years. I started coming for the story time, had my daughter, and when you don't know what to do, come in for story time, and actually the library is probably where I met all of my close friends. Even my neighbors. We say hi and we wave, and then when they had kids, I told them you should come to the story time, and that's it's been a focal point for my social life. A lot of people go to like church, like I go to the library, Moortown doesn't have much much of anything. It's got the school, it's got the general store, the gas station, and the library. And when something as big as Irene takes place and it affects the entire state and outside, nobody's really reporting on our small town. No one's really. It's if you don't get that information out there, I guess it really does. The story doesn't get told. And our librarian did a great job of collecting photos and reiterating information from the meetings at Town Hall that not everybody can attend. And actually the roads were so destroyed that I had to work hard to come in here to make sure, I could help out and see how my friends were. And, the state of the school and whatnot. And Lisa's reporting and stories and pictures were actually, some of them was the very first time I had even seen just how devastated Moortown was. And when I saw the bridge out, I couldn't believe it. And then I had to pass that information on and those photos on to my friends and family, and they, I think that actually helped get the word out, just how devastated it was. I told my mom, Irene hit us all hard, and a lot of stores and stuff are closing their doors for good, and you can't get around on the roads. And it's one thing to tell her that, but when you send her those pictures that our library's Facebook page had on it, I think it really drove the point home, just how serious it was, and got the word out there, which was pretty important. The library is one of the only buildings that wasn't destroyed in town, so that was, I think that was great. You could come here and it was like a breath of fresh air. It was like, here's something that, that's open to the public, that's actually still open. That's just complete luck. I don't know how this place escaped it. It's also, I can't really think that we used the library as a real meeting spot, but we usually, the library is on this end of town, and so you start a town hall and you usually wind up meeting back here, and there's usually somebody, one or two of your friends here, if you don't know what else to do. This is usually where I meet after Halloween, after everything. So Irene wasn't much different.
The Moortown Memorial Library was extremely lucky during the flood. We had just minimal damage. We had some flooding in the basement, some book sale books were ruined, and we had some dust that came in after the flood dried up a little bit, so we closed down for a couple of days because of that. And some books were checked out to homes that were flooded, and so we lost those, but it was all minimal, and we were just extremely lucky. It was the rest of the town and the village that had the most damage. The post office, the town clerk's office, the fire department, the school. I mean, so many homes. It was pretty incredible. And so our role really, I believe, was a place that people could meet, to talk, to check their email, to come and check out a book or a DVD and kind of get away a little bit, and have a place that was normal and amidst all the strangeness that was happening. I mean, every day was different here, and I think having a place where people could come in and be back to what they were familiar with was really important. Another way that we helped out the community was by using social media. The very first morning when everyone was just trying to figure out what happened, my husband rode his bike into town, and he started emailing me back photos of what he had seen. And when I got those photos, I really had to make a choice. The first I thought of, would I be helping Moortown? And I knew that Moortown didn't have a website, and they didn't have any official social media or anything that I knew of. So I felt that was a good fit. And then I had to decide whether the library should represent this type of information. And I remember sitting behind my computer looking at these photos, and I just thought, well, I can't imagine a patron wanting to know anything else but this right now. This is what everyone was thinking about in Moortown. And so I uploaded the photos, and I made a commitment to stay on top of the page, and every day I uploaded new photos, and I went to the morning meetings in town every day and brought home information from that and uploaded it. And then eventually the town started working with me, and they gave me information to put on Facebook because they knew that it was getting out to people. And so I was putting on information from the town, from the Department of Libraries, from FEMA, just making sure that any information that needed to get out to people was on the site. And I think we jumped from 40 likes to 100 within a couple of weeks. And we had people commenting on photos and talking with each other and just using the site as a way to communicate about the flood. And we had people from other towns and other states in the country thanking the library for giving out information about Moortown, because in the beginning nobody knew it was happening here. So it was a valuable use of the Facebook page, and I think most people appreciated it, and I think it was the right decision for us. And I would do it the same again, I guess, if anything ever happened like that. If there was another emergency that I thought people needed to know about, I would use the page that way. Yes. So other services we provided were internet access. That was key. Lots of people didn't, not only were they displaced because of their home was flooded, but maybe they gave up their home for people who were flooded, and so they didn't have internet access. So we had people coming in using internet and the computer, printing forms, because even though we had kind of all halted in Moortown and stopped, the rest of the world went on, and people still had to send out forms, and people still had to communicate and do their jobs and things like that. And the library provided a way for flood victims and for other people in the town to be able to stay on top of their lives. Also, the school librarian from Moortown Elementary School and I, we worked together to provide a whole day of visits for the school children. They were intense at that time because the school had flooded. And so for a whole day, Megan and Allison and I just had kids streaming in, and they were amazing. They were, it was a sight to see all those kids in there, and they were just happy to be in some place that was warm and dry because it was raining and different days. And yeah, it was an incredible experience, and I'm all very, very proud of them all. We also provided a place for people to talk, to get together and share stories. I remember one man came down from the hill and decided that he was going to make the trek to the library. He hadn't been in town because he felt guilty because he had been fine, and he didn't feel like he wanted to get in the way, and he felt like he should just stay out of Moortown. But he came into the library and he met with some other people that were here, and he was able to really talk, and everyone had this guilt, even people who had their houses completely flooded felt bad for other people, and so to be able to share stories with your neighbor in a place that was completely normal and safe feeling was a huge service to our community. I've been asked if the library helped rebuild the community, and I would have to say that we didn't help rebuild the community because it was never broken. Buildings were broken, stuff was thrown away, roads were destroyed, bridges were broken, things were broken, but the community was never broken. In fact, I would say it was stronger than ever. And the role the library played in this was being one of the only town buildings that was able to keep on running and provide a place for people to meet and provide services that helped them move on with their lives. It was a place where people could see some normalcy and a place where people could meet with their neighbor. And I think in that way it was extremely valuable.